Hello student, welcome to digital classes. This video is for class 6 and the subject is science. This is the new chapter number 8, body movements. In this chapter I am going to discuss about locomotion and the body movement in animal, human body and its movement, bone joints, type of bone joints, body movements. A change in the position of any part of the body with respect to its axis is called movement. Stationary animals such as sponges, corals, sea anemone shows this kind of movement. For example, when you agree or disagree with someone, you shake your head. This shaking of head is called movement of the head. For any body movement, energy and coordination between different organ systems are required. All animals meet their energy requirement through nutrition and respiration. The decision about the movement is made by the nervous system depending upon the stimulus. The nervous system then directs the muscular and the skeleton system of our body to move. Some very important movement in our body are movement of teeth and jaws during eating, circulation of blood in the body, movement of the heart muscles, movement of the eyelid. Our body has a lot of flexibility. It can move its part in different direction easily. For example, you can rotate your arm around your shoulder, you can move your arm sideways, upward and downward. You can bend your arm at elbow, you cannot bend its back. You can bend your leg at the knee, you cannot bend it beyond 180. You can turn your neck around, up and down and sideways. The human body is made up of 206 bones and cartilages. Bones are hard, cartilages is soft and elastic. The skeleton system of a human body consists of skull, backbone, ribs, breastbone, bone in arms and legs, shoulder bones, hip or pelvic bones. Now locomotion and movement, both are different. Now I am going to tell you about the locomotion and movement of the body. Locomotion is basically the movement of an organism as a whole from one place to another, but the movement is just only the change in the position of any part of the body of an organism, like movement of hand. Now what is locomotion and movement? Locomotion means the movement or the ability to move from one place to another, and movement is an acting of a moving, means only the one part is move, like you have to move your leg, you have to move your hand, but the whole body is not move from one place to another is called movement. Now the question arises, why do animals need to do locomotion? Animal need to do locomotion because they need to search for food and water and shelter, escape from danger, example prey. When there is a danger, they want to or we want to escape from that place. Avoid unfavorable condition, example migration. When the condition when there is a very cold condition and some birds migrate to another, like Siberian crane, for warmer place. Now the reproduce or to find a mate. When they want to reproduce, they have to locomate to another place in search of their partners. Movements in human. The framework of the human body, the skeleton, the muscles and the skin is a strong and yet flexible construct. The 206 bones that made up the adult skeleton supports the body and work with muscles and nerves to move the body's various parts. The human body has about 650 muscles responsible for the movement, and even the smallest motion required at least two muscles working in opposition. All movements that change the position of the bony parts of the body occurs at joint. The skeleton system consists of many separate bones, most of which are held together at joints by flexible connective tissues. Joints are necessary since bones are too rigid to bend without causing damage. Not all animals need limbs to move quickly. Snakes are limbless. A snake moves by forming its body into zigzag, gripping the ground with its underside and pushing itself forward. The fastest snake, the black mamba, can reach over 30 km per hour. Animals such as flatworm often move by undulating in a continuous ripple. Now see in this picture, there is a movement and locomotion in the human body. Joints. Joints are the place where two bones meet. All of your body except of one, the thyroid bones in your neck, forms a joint with other bone. Joints hold your bones together and allow you rigid skeleton to move. Some of your joints, like those in your skull, are fixed and don't allow any movement. The bone in your skull are held together with fibrous connective tissues. Other joints, such as those between the vertebrae in your spine, which are connected to each other by pads of cartilages, can only move in small amount. Bone joints. Why are we able to move only certain part in our body? From the observation made in the previous section, we noticed that the movement of the body part is possible only where two bones of our meet. If you examine such location in your body, you find that all such locations, two or more bones are joined. The locomotion in our body where two or more bones are joined are called bone joints, or simply as joint. All our movement are brought about by the joint and muscles. At joint, the bones are held together by ligaments. Now it is a human skeleton. You see bones everywhere in our body. Our body is made up of bone. The framework of those body bones is called skeleton. I repeat, the framework of these bone is called skeleton. Human skeleton. Bones cannot be bent. So how do we bend our elbow? With the help of joint. The place where two bones meet or join are called joints. Now there are types of joints. One is fixed joint, second is movable joint, ball and socket joint, pivot joint, hinge joints, and gliding joints. Now see the location of such joints. Fixed joints is skull, pivot in neck, ball and socket joint at shoulder, hinge joints at elbow. Now ball and socket joint. The joint in which the rounded end of one bone fits into the cavity hollow space of the other bone is called ball and socket joint. This kind of joint involves two bones. One of bone has a large rounded end and which fits into a cap-like socket of the other bone. This kind of joint is generally found in large bones such as shoulder joint and hip joint. A ball and socket joint provide the greatest degree of movement among different kind of joint include rotation, flexation, extension, abduction and adduction. Now pivot joints. The ball on a stick type of joint is called a pivot joint. A pivot joint allow movement in many planes up and down, side to side, etc. Pivot joint, also known as rotatory joints, are a type of synovial joint that permit axial rotation. The moving bones rotates within a ring formed by the concave surface of the second bone and adjoining ligament movement. Pivot joint allow rotation around a single axis only, and therefore mechanically speaking they possess only 1 degree of freedom, axial rotation. The joint of the skull to the first two vertebrae of the backbone is a pivotal joint. Now the fixed joint, the joint about which movement of bone is not possible, are called fixed joint. The zipper like joint of cranium brain's case is a fixed joint. Fixed joints or synarthrosis. The word shrine tell us that the bones are fused and therefore permit minimal or no movement. These joints are fibrous joints, which means that the binding tissues between two bone is fibrous in nature. Example of a fixed joint is the studs between the skull bone. Movable joints are of two types: freely movable joint and partly movable joint. The four major movable joint in our body are ball and socket joint, pivot joint, hinge joint, gliding joint. Now what are movable joint? Synovial joint are known as movable joint, refers to the joint that are capable of moving in a variety of direction, allow mobility. Such example includes the knee joints, elbow joints, wrist joint, shoulder joint, hip joint and ankle joint. The joint surface are smooth and covered with cartilages and gathered in a so-called joint capsule. The joint capsule is a fibrous connecting tissues which ensures that the joint is secure externally. It is surrounded by fibrous membrane which is capable of excreting and reabsorbing the synovial fluid, colorless viscous substance whose role is to fill the joint to keep them lubricated and make them move more easily. What function do movable joints serve? The main function of the joint is to allow both movement and flexibility. They tend to be classified by the degree of their possible movement, the number of bones involved and the complexity of the joint. The main function of the movable joint is to allow the execution of a wide range of movement, as in the case of the knee joint or the elbow joint. The type of synovial joints are based on the shape and can be classified in the various forms: flat, spherical, ellipsoidal and are typical consistent. Hinge joints, the joint which allow movement only in one plane and only up to 180 degree, is called the hinge joint. The knee joint is a hinge joint. Knee joint allow back and forth movement only. This joint is said to be a very simple joint that allow movement only in one axis. It allow only two kind of movements, flexions and extension. Example of this joint is the joint found between in the elbow and knee. Hinge joints are a type of joint that function much like the hinge on a door. Allow bones to move in one direction, back and forth, with limited motion along one plane. The fingers, toes, elbows, knees and ankle contain hinge joints. Now the gliding joint. A gliding joint is a synovial joint in which the bony surface that the joint holds together are flat or only slightly rounded. A synovial joint is the living material that hold two or more bones together but also permits these bones to move relatively to each other. A more precise interpretation of the international Latin anatomical term of the gliding joints would be the joint that joins flat bony surface. The wrist have good example of gliding joint as well as joint of other types. The joint which allows only a limited movement due to the sliding nature of the cartilages is called gliding joint. Movable joint of the backbone are gliding joints. Now in this video we discussed the movement of an organism bodily from one place to another is called locomotion. Different organisms use different organ for locomotion. Birds can walk on a surface and fly in air. Birds use their wings for flying. They use their breast muscles to flap their wings. All higher animals and humans use muscles and bones for locomotion and movements. The place where two or more bones meet is called bone joint or simply a joint. Adjoint bones are held together by ligaments. Various type of bones joints are fixed bone, movable bone, ball and socket joint, pivot joint, hinge joint and gliding joint are the movable joint, and fixed joints are basically the skull. I hope everyone would understand what I taught in this video. If there is any kind of problem, you can discuss within the class. In the second part of this chapter, I will discuss about skeleton system, function of skeleton system, various organ of skeleton system.